Hey, welcome back. Man, we have a heavy show today. It's a very difficult show in a lot of ways because you know as I know that passion is important when dealing with a community. And we'd like to think that serious problems are out there somewhere, but often they're right here in our backyard. We get involved because that problem touches us, affects our lives, changes our lives forever. Our guest today has had that experience. My name is Vin DeQuino. Her name is Susan Salomone.
Hi, Vin.
Susan, what a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
Talk to me about your situation, how you got involved in it, and what that involvement means to you.
Okay, all right. As you know, Vin, my organization is called Drug Crisis in Our Backyard. And it was started in June of 2012, 5 years ago now, because of the death of my son Justin, who at that time was 29, on May 29th, 2012. And my son had suffered with addiction for 10 years actually before he passed away. And then it started with marijuana.
Yep.
So when I hear parents say it's just marijuana, it's like it isn't just marijuana.
It's the beginning of something bigger.
Not for everyone, but
it
for
can
many,
be.
yes.
Yeah. For Justin it was.
For Justin it was.
You know, and you know, it's so easy for people with addiction to say, "Oh yeah, but that doesn't happen to me. That wasn't my situation."
Without addiction to say that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different routes to the wrong place.
Right, exactly.
And there's a lot of ways to get there. What you've been trying to do since is to help us learn from what you had to learn the hard way.
So what happened with us is, as I said, he started with marijuana at 16 years old. And he went off to Marist College. He was a good student. He was a B student. He probably would have been better if he didn't have issues, including the use of marijuana. Yep. However, college was really, it was a place where he learned to use stronger drugs. And this happens a lot with kids that are a little unsure of themselves, have some anxiety. They go off to college, and now they're in an environment where they don't have any supervision. Yeah. And now they've grown up in this bedroom community where they've been driven everywhere and they have been well taken care of. They go off to college, now they're on their own, and some of them are, they don't do well with it.
They don't have the rules.
They don't have the coping skills to deal with it. So they use stronger drugs, and that's what happened to him. And at about age 23, he started to use opiates, which were flooding the streets at that time because
they are now too.
Yeah, but this is
better.
I'm talking about when it started.
Yeah.
Okay, back in about 2003, 2004. And by 2006, 2007, well, maybe about 2008, he started using heroin. And so he passed away, as I said, on May 29, 2012. And I wrote an article at that time. Within a couple of days, I wrote an article about our family's story. Because what we didn't hear at that time anywhere was that this was happening. Nobody was talking about it.
People push it away, like, you know, like it was nothing important. They sweep it under the rug.
And that is because of the stigma associated with addiction, which is one of our missions is to overcome the stigma associated with addiction by education and bringing awareness.
It's not wrong to be addicted. It's wrong to not do something about it and to realize that it is a crisis and it is a problem.
It's actually a disease.
Yeah,
addiction is a disease.
I mean, you know, when I was growing up, it was alcohol. You know, and there was marijuana, and there, you know, it was Vietnam era too. You know, and there was a lot of drugs, and people didn't know enough about it. You know, people would say to me, "You better stay away from that marijuana. You can overdose on that stuff." And we were like, "You don't overdose on marijuana. You don't even know what the heck you're talking about. Marijuana's nothing. It's a recreation drug." Well, that's one recreation that some people don't come home from.
Exactly. And actually, the marijuana today is much stronger than it was back in.
And it's laced with all kinds of
back in
things.
the 70s.
And it can kill you. It can kill you. It's not just, it's not a glass of beer. It's dangerous.
Right.
So after this happened,
So after I wrote my article, it was called Saving Justin, A Mother's Battle with Addiction.
Wow.
It was published in the Mayapack News, which is Holston Media, which now they have 4 newspapers in the local area.
Yes.
And I got a call on June 14th, which the day it came out, from Carol and Lou Christensen, who said that they buried their son that day.
Wow.
And his name is Eric Christensen, and he passed away on June 9th, 2012. So we got together, and we were very angry, grief-stricken parents, 4 of us, and we felt that we couldn't just let it go, that we had to do something. So we had a forum, an event, a community event, on August 9th, 2012 at the Mayapack Library in their community room, which holds 150 people. We didn't know how many people were going to show up. We had no idea. I knew my sister was coming because she said she would, and Carol knew her sister was coming, but otherwise we had no idea. But we had people standing in the aisles and sitting on the floor in that community center because other people were dealing with this, and they were isolating, and nobody was talking about it. And so that was our first one. And since then, we do about 4 community events a year. We speak in schools. We have support groups for families in Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess County. And we are everywhere. Everywhere. If there are people, we'll be there.
Because the problem is everywhere.
Right, exactly.
You need to be everywhere because it's everywhere.
And there are a lot of other organizations that are involved in prevention and education and awareness. And we collaborate with many organizations in Westchester County, in Putnam County, and in Dutchess County, because this takes everyone moving forward in the same direction to attack this problem. Do you know that this year, 2016, the data just came out for overdose deaths in this country? There were between 59,000 and 65,000 overdose deaths in this country. Wow. That's more in 2016. Wow. That's more people that had died in the entire Vietnamese War in its entirety. Wow. So this is a major public health problem in our country, and we need to get our arms around it.
Yeah,
we really need to get our arms around it.
Face the fact that it's here.
Right.
I love the fact that you're calling it crisis in our backyard.
Drug crisis.
Drug crisis. But it is a crisis. And that's what we have to understand, that it's not just a problem that you can just dismiss. It's happening, and young age. There's kids that are starting at 12 and 13 and 14 years old, and the peer pressure is frightening.
Right.
It's very difficult to be in a group of kids, and someone pulls out a joint, and you say no. It takes almost more strength to say no than it does to say yes. And then before you know it, 1 leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to opiates.
There are risk factors for addiction. Okay, so not everybody that smokes a joint is going to get addicted. There are risk factors. One of the major risk factors is age of onset. So those 12 and 13-year-olds are more apt to be addicted than someone that smokes pot at 18 or drinks at 18, 19, 20. Much higher risk.
But there are addictive personalities.
Well, their mental illness is a very high co-occurring disorder that is connected with addiction. Okay, so someone may have a compulsive disorder, they may have anxiety, they may have depression, and those people, that's another risk factor for addiction, because if you have a mental health issue, you'll be more apt to try to self-medicate with pot, alcohol, or any other drug. Another risk factor is family predisposition. So if there is addiction in your family, and it could be anywhere in your family tree. It doesn't have to be your mother, father, grandmother, grandfather. Could it be an uncle that always gets drunk at the Christmas party? You have to let your kids know that this disease is in your family. This is a disease.
Yeah, it's a disease.
It is a disease. It was a groundbreaking report that came out in November of 2016 by the Surgeon General of the United States, 400-page report documenting substance use disorder as a chronic brain disease. So that is very, very heavy information.
Yeah.
Because that's how it needs to be treated.
And there's also a lot of conflicting information out there. And there's a lot of information, period. I mean, this whole idea of 250 channels on your TV, and some of the movies and some of the things that we see on there become confusing for our kids. And they look at some of these things and they listen to some of these arguments. Years ago, if a person was caught with 2 or 3 joints of marijuana, he could go to jail for who knows how long.
Yeah, the Rockefeller laws, that was not very good either.
And then, so this whole idea of the Rockefeller laws, now these people, many of these people grew up with those. Now their kids come home and say they're smoking marijuana. And even the parents are confused. They're saying, well, the Rockefeller laws were wrong. They were too harsh. Right. So what? So now you loosen up, and what happens? That's what happens. What happens is kids think it's not a big deal, especially when people are shouting, legalize it. There's nothing wrong with it. But
there's
for some people with problems, it is a problem for them. Maybe not everybody, but what about the Justins?
All right, there's a lot of them too. There's 65,000 of them that died last year.
And what do we do? So, just say, well, happens? No, we can't. That's why I give you all the credit in the world to stepping up to bat when you know that this can happen to your child, your son, your daughter. How sure are you that your child doesn't have an addictive personality? How sure are you?
Stop. It's not a personality issue as much as a brain disease. Okay,
but that disease becomes part of their personality.
Yeah, see,
and leads them into what they're doing.
Yeah. So the thing is it's more about what's the process in the brain than the personality. Okay, that does come into it.
But it affects the personality.
Because we're all different. Like like we're all different in our personalities, our brains are different. So we have different levels of chemicals.
Yeah.
And based on that, there can be a predisposition
could be a chemical disorder then.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they see in PET scans, which is the newest research model for tracking some of like a mental illness and addiction for one, to see how the brain reacts to the different substances. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you're absolutely right in saying that no one really knows. We run support groups, Vin, and we have like last night I had about 20 people in a support group. These are parents that are struggling. Their kids are struggling with addiction.
You don't know what to say. You know, it's difficult because your child is fighting you tooth and nail.
Right.
And it's difficult, and it's hard to say no. You know, I remember Nancy Reagan, was it?
Yeah.
Who said,
just say no.
Just say no. Yeah, raise a couple teenagers and see how easy it is to just say no.
Yeah,
it's
that
not
wasn't
easy.
Very good.
It's not easy.
That wasn't a very good marketing campaign, to tell you the truth.
But it shows us how difficult it can be.
Yes.
Raising a teenager is no picnic because there's so many ifs. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Well, what we say is say no to any unreasonable requests. Say no to all unreasonable requests.
Yeah, here's the problem. Your kid's definition of an unreasonable request and your definition of an unreasonable request is unreasonable.
Right. You're the parent, and that's
right.
That's what we tell.
You have to be the parent.
I tell anyone that calls me and we talk, I say, you're the parent. Would you let your kid touch the hot stove when they were 2 years old?
Yeah.
Would you?
No.
No,
You know,
no,
and
you wouldn't.
I remember
because
fighting.
parenting when they're 2, 3, 4 years old is easy.
Yeah.
It's parenting when they're 12, 13, 14,
Yeah.
15 that there's the gray area.
Yeah.
So what parents really have to do is figure out what their value system is around substance use to begin with.
Yeah.
So are they okay with smoking pot? A lot of parents are smoking pot now. So it's hard to tell your kid not
They
to
came
smoke
from
pot
that era,
when
you
they're
know.
not, when they're
That's what
smoking
it
pot.
is. It's that
it's an
era
issue.
of the anti-Reagan era, where people said he was wrong, that those were too strict. It's only leisure, but the marijuana of today is not the marijuana of yesterday. There are so many things that we've learned and have done, chemically changing this marijuana. It's not what it used to be, and it could be, it has been, is dangerous. And it's hard for kids to realize that. Marijuana isn't just one, it's one name, but not for one thing.
Right.
But marijuana could be so many different kinds, and it could be dangerous. And as you say, mini bikes lead to motorcycles.
Right.
You know?
You're absolutely right. That's a great metaphor. I like that. I really like that analogy.
It does happen, you know,
Yeah.
and it scares me when my grandson says, Papa, I want a mini bike. I got nervous. I mean, so did I eventually get a quad? Yes. Did I try to teach him all the safety rules? Did he get on it and speed? Yes. So you get nervous and you don't know where to draw the line.
Right.
And what you're saying, and I think you're 100% right, is you must draw a line.
Right.
Wherever it is, you must be the parent, and you must know what you stand to lose by not being the parent.
Right.
Your group is an important group because it represents awareness.
Yeah, that's our mission, to bring awareness of the
Yes,
rampant
and
use of
to
opiates in
let
our community.
people understand what other people have done. Now, I am 100% in agreement that just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. But I want to hear what worked, what you tried at least, so
Right.
I can at least know the guilt or the error in making a mistake is not half as bad as not doing something about it. At least if you made a mistake, you tried to do what you could do to stop a potential crisis. And you can't say, well, that wouldn't happen here. God, I remember confronting a parent and saying, look, you know, your kid's getting a little heavy into the drug scene. And he said, how dare you? My son would never touch that stuff. Don't you ever show your face in front of me again. How dare you? That kid got so messed up because it was the beginning. If that father caught that at the beginning, if he listened, you don't
Right.
always have to agree with what other people say, but for God's sakes, listen. And that's why in a group like this, you hear other parents say what they feel. What are some of the powerful things that you've heard these parents say that you want other parents to hear?
Well, for one thing, they're embarrassed. Parents are embarrassed. They
True.
feel guilty.
Yeah, they feel guilty.
They feel guilty, and we try to give them some advice around that, because
Yeah.
feeling guilty isn't going to help the situation.
It's not necessarily what you did wrong as a parent,
Right.
because there's other things that factor into why your
Tell
child
them
is
to
doing this.
detach from the situation, so that many parents believe that they can fix their child, and
Yeah.
and when I say child, that's in quotations, because
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
talking 29 years old.
Yeah, I'm talking about young adults. Usually, most of the people that the parents we deal with, their kids were already they're at least in their early 20s.
Yeah.
So early 20s to mid 30s, and so we tell them to detach, which is very, very hard. I tried to detach with my son when he was sick, and it's real. And detachment does not mean physical detachment, because my son lived with us. Detachment means to not do for them what they can do for themselves.
Yeah.
So to my therapist used to say, it's very difficult for your son to learn how to play the piano when you're sitting on the piano stool. And that is so true.
That's a wonderful analogy.
Yeah, because they need to live their own life. This is a journey for them.
Yeah.
And they need to learn how to move forward in their lives.
On the screen is a powerful picture.
Yes. I bring my son everywhere I go, and he brings me to places I never thought I'd be. I'll tell you the truth. And
in my new book, Flowers by the Roadside, it's about people who are what I call earthbound angels. And they're people who help people complete what they couldn't complete before they passed. I firmly believe that you are an earthbound angel working Justin's magic. He has a job to do, and you are helping him complete that job.
I truly believe that too. Because I will tell you, some of the circumstances that have happened since we started this organization are absolutely outstanding.
And let me tell you that some of the things that you are encountering are not coincidental. Some of the things that you say are the key to what other people need to move forward,
right? To
understand, to stop things before they happen.
Right. You know what, Vin, I am not smart enough to be able to help all the people that I've helped. I am helping people through the spirit of my son. There is no question in my mind.
Saving the world one child at a time.
Right.
That's what it is. If you only save one, you have saved one.
Right.
And that's important. So you're saving a whole lot. And you're making people aware that it is difficult. It's not an easy task. And raising children is not an easy task. You know, I laugh every time I think of when the doctor, when my son was born, he said, I got good news and bad news for you. You have a son. Bad news is, I don't have a manual for you. They don't come with manuals.
Right.
And that joke led me as a parent the rest of my life, because he's right. There are no manuals. Right. There's no set way to raise a child. But the minute you stop trying, then you're failing. Right. You can never stop trying.
Right.
And you have to do what you can do. It won't always work.
And it's not, you know, this goes for all children. It doesn't only, you know, and I that word child, you think of a young person. But I'm saying
offspring.
Children as our, as our offspring. That it's hard for us to sit back and watch them lead their lives. It's not easy.
Oh, you don't know how many times I shriek because my son's 35 years old. You know, and at 35 years old, you have to stop being his dad? No, I'll never stop being his father. I'll always be his father, whether he's 35 or 85. But there's some things I can't say. Some things, they don't matter if I say it. He's going to ignore it or he's going to accept it. But you know what? I found that there are some things that do get through, and I notice it. And now he says, you were right. You were right about this, or you were right about that. Does he always listen? No, never did. He listens when he thinks it's the right thing. But you can't stop talking because he's listening. They're always listening.
Yeah.
Whether they're taking your advice is another thing. We have about 3 minutes left. I want you to share the passion that you are feeling for what you do.
What I'd like to do is tell people about our family support group, which meets in Mayapack.
How often?
It meets every other week in Mayapack, every other week in Yorktown, and every other week in Dutchess.
Can we say specifically where it is in Mayapack?
You have to go on our website
Okay.
to find. We meet.
Let's repeat that. The website.
Yeah, it's drugcrisisinourbackyard.org. We are a 501c3.
There it is. There's a phone number. Jot it down. Can we call you?
Sure, you could call. That's
Call and get specific information.
right. The schedule of our meetings is on our website.
Good.
Under community and then under support, and you'll see. We also have Al-Anon, the Al-Anon schedule on there. Al-Anon is a 12-step program for people who are dealing with substance use.
Saved millions.
Okay, the other thing I'd like to mention is we have an early intervention program, and what that is for parents that have found their young children, 12, 13, 14, using drugs, or maybe they got in school because of drug use, they got in trouble in school. Right. It's an educational program for both the adults, the parents, and the child, and they're separate from each other. We educate both at the same time. The curriculum is pretty much the same, but age appropriate. And then we bring them together to talk about next steps going forward, sort of like a contract. And that is very, very useful. We've done several of them and gotten very good feedback on that.
Excellent.
So that's another thing we do. We have an office at 16 Fair Street in Carmel. You're more than welcome to stop in. That's why we got a storefront.
There's nothing wrong
so that
with
you
just
wouldn't be
a
afraid.
question or two. There's nothing wrong with not having all the answers. But there is something wrong in not seeking the answers.
Right. I say to parents, educate yourself. Don't be afraid of it. Just because you learn about it does not mean that you're going to be affected by it, but learn about it. Look for the signs and symptoms, know what they are, and also, if your child is having a problem, know that recovery is possible. Not everyone moves on to stronger and stronger drugs. Know that recovery is possible, and there are many pathways to recovery.
And getting information for the problem before it's a problem is really smart.
Right.
Why wait until it already happens?
Right. We educate ourselves when we're pregnant. You know, we learn all about what to do.
You don't learn about pregnancy after the child's born.
Right, exactly.
Too late.
Right. So we say the same thing. Continue to educate yourself, in particular about this epidemic, because it is affecting so many families.
We're talking today about a crisis in your backyard. Your child, your cousin, your nephew, your niece, you. Drugs have become a major problem in this country. We have got to fight it together. People like you.
And I have a lot of people that work with me, and they're they all
people like
help.
you and people like you need to be together.
Right.
We are not a community unless the people join together.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
being
so much
here.
for having me
Thank
on.
you for your courage.
Thank you.
Continue being an earthbound angel.
Thank you.
He's got a mission to complete.
I like that.
Thank you for joining us. Pleasure to have you here.